Think we're live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Nordic Startup and Entrepreneur Community's hashtag Livestream Thursday. And this is a weekly chat where we talk with entrepreneurs and startup founders from all over the Nordics and the world to learn about their stories and journeys, both successes and failures. And this Thursday, I'm pleased to announce that we are joined by an entrepreneur here in Finland, the CEO of AdLaunch, Joel Hypén. Thank you very much for joining us.
Hi, thanks for having me, Shane.
Cool stuff. If you guys are watching live right now, we want you to comment below startup videos so that we know that you're here, or whatever you would like. The comments that help us, that you comment, will help Facebook tweak their algorithm and show the video to more people. So it's really, really good for us. Also, if you have any related questions for Joel anytime during the stream, feel free to comment them right here below the video, and I'll pass those along to Joel during the conversation. So, Joel, let's jump right into this. So, usually what we do is we start with your background. So if you can give us just a brief history of where you're from, why you started a company in the Nordics, what has been your past in startups, and then how did you get to where you are today?
Okay, good stuff. So I guess what describes me best is kind of like being this mixture between media and a culture-related background, and then a business education. So I've got an MA from the Finnish Theatre Academy, but I've also studied IP law and entrepreneurship in economic schools. And I've lived in Helsinki and Tampere in Finland, but also for about 4 years in the UK and around half a year in Paris. So I've been around quite a bit and I travel quite a bit, but that describes me pretty well.
Okay, and how did you get from living in Paris and all this stuff to deciding you want to start a startup? Like, what was that process?
I've always been super entrepreneurial, so I guess it was like just moving around a lot when I was young. Basically, for my parents' work, I had that typical kind of like outlier or outsider experience where in both the positive and negative, I never felt quite sort of fit into the mold of wherever I lived as a kid. And I started my first kind of solopreneur company thing about 13 years ago. So I've been working as an entrepreneur besides studying for most of my adult life.
Mm-hmm. And then is AdLaunch your first startup, or did you have something before this?
I would call it like the first startup in the scalability and outside funding kind of sense. But yeah, so we had the previous venture is a company called Zero Creative, which is a more traditional video production company and is still doing well. From that kind of experience and client feedback, I just noticed that there's a strong need for our clients to create videos in a faster, more affordable way, and we thought we want to sort of cater to that need by building a SaaS service for easily creating videos. And I also had a strong motivation to try and build something that could become highly international. Production companies, by their nature, are quite local as businesses, so I wanted to kind of like use my experience of living in multiple countries and studying in multiple countries to build something that could truly be an international or even a global business.
Right. And then how did you go about building it from a sense? Because we have a lot of first-time entrepreneurs, a lot of people who are maybe not so experienced. Like, what were your steps you had the idea, and then how did you go about going from there?
Okay, so first of all, it's definitely a work in progress. So I'd say that any software startup is never quite finished before you either leave the company or exit the company by selling it. So I think that's a good mental attitude to have, that it's more like a ongoing thing that you just have to work and iterate on. But yeah, basically I started the concept and business plan for AdLaunch in 2015, and then I tried to first recruit developers myself to get on board. But that didn't really work out. It seemed like the better talent was already employed, and the people who I was getting interested maybe weren't the best out of the best kind of in terms of development. But then in 2016, I found my co-founder, Marco, who's our CTO. And then I think we started to kind of like get a better task division of me just focusing on the business, the fundraising, IP, and the actual video content, and Marco being in charge for our tech development. So that's definitely a good thing to learn and really kind of take time to plan on for younger entrepreneurs, is that you need to have a good mix of people. You can't do everything by yourself, right?
Exactly. So what did you think in the beginning? Like you had this idea for AdLaunch. Was it the whole concept that you have now, or was it something a little bit less in the beginning? I mean, what was your real vision for it?
Well, funnily enough, I was just going through old pitch decks that are now 3 years old. That even though the idea has gotten a lot more sort of sophisticated, and the tool or the product itself, but yeah, pretty much we're still on the same track with the same kind of slogan or vision of making video advertising easy for small businesses to create as well. But of course, there's been some small pivots or changes around the technology or the value proposition. But yeah, I'd say that we're still pretty much solving the same problem that we set out to solve, which is to cater for small businesses and large volume advertisers alike to create videos more easily for a growing number of social media channels.
Right. So then at the beginning, it was you and Marco, right? And how did you guys build the team from there? How did you decide on what you needed to go next? I mean, what was the actual process? You guys were together, you accomplished something, I'm assuming, and then you went from there and built the next part of the team. So what was like the first process before you jumped to the next stage?
Yeah, we've used multiple kind of strategies on that. And I'd say that we've done partly outsourced work, and then also we've found sort of good developers from friends and friends of friends who then were interested about what we were doing. Maybe they weren't willing to jump on board full time, straight from day one, but then we started, ordering freelance work from them after their day job, and then it took, 6 months or so, and then they were prepared to take the leap and then jump on board as full-time employees. So that's also something that I'd recommend for everyone. Building a network is something that don't be let down if everything you planned didn't work out on the first try. It's all about meeting interesting people that have a good fit for what you're doing, and like-minded people. And you're going to run into the same people year after year, especially in small countries like Finland, right? So right. It's kind of like keeping an open atmosphere and not getting angry at people if the time wasn't right for them to jump on board, or if they had to take another job. Everybody needs a job to get their bills paid, right? So, but we've noticed this occur quite a few times, that people will come and go around, and it usually leads to good things when you're patient.
Right. Good philosophy to have. So, I mean, was it from the beginning? How did everything go really well for you guys? Did you hit the ground running? You had this idea and it started going? Or were there some big struggles in the way? Was there something stopping the business? Was there a big competitor? Like what are some things you guys had to overcome on your journey to where you are today?
I think, to be honest, building a startup is all about overcoming obstacles. So not a week goes by that we don't have some kind of new obstacle, and we've just kind of tried to get used to that role of being a fixer, or just kind of being able to tackle those problems with a smiling face. Because if you are not prepared to do that kind of thing, then you're just going to be kind of like very tired by all the things or obstacles that you're going to meet. So it's a healthy attitude to to build a mindset that it's all about fixing problems, because in the end, you're trying to build something new. There's a lot of inertia and a lot of kind of hesitance if that new thing, be it whatever, self-driving cars or a video ad SaaS business, that nobody is especially waiting for you to kind of make it big or sort of like be the next big thing. So there's more against new things that we as entrepreneurs always have to overcome. And I think that kind of mindset kind of helps alleviate that kind of tiredness towards that and keep a positive outset.
Right. And speaking of problems, so obviously AdLaunch is solving a problem. So what was that problem that you saw that wasn't being tackled by some other company? And then how are you guys solving it at AdLaunch?
Yeah, so I've made the analogy that in 2006, before Google released the display planner tool for making display ads, like banner ads, before that date, mostly only big corporations were able to create banner advertising and display advertising. So Google released a product that then kind of democratized the whole field of creating display ads. And then through AdWords, every entrepreneur in the world can pretty much create a display ad and advertise through Google AdWords, right? So we see ourselves doing the same democratizing effect for video. So we see that any startup that is able to pick a field or industry that they have substance knowledge on, it always helps if you've worked in the industry or know people in the industry, and you have some kind of value proposition that can make something that used to cost a lot and try and democratize that to a lot of people. And I think that's where a lot of successes are coming from. If you think about Uber or Airbnb or any big startup company that has grown really big, they're all about democratizing something to a bigger audience. And I think that's a good attitude to go about finding good entrepreneurial ideas as well.
Right. And getting into all that, I mean, you're in Finland and you're doing this sort of ads and videos and marketing style of company. Finland's not really known for having that kind of stuff, right? So it doesn't really have a background, or you don't think of Finland as being the country to have that. So is it just an open playing field in Finland for you guys, or are you running into some people that are maybe getting into the same market nowadays? I mean, how do you see Finland progressing in terms of marketing and ads and maybe even the Nordics as a whole?
That's a good question. And we often say that we've built AdLaunch to be a global business from day one. So the website's in English and all of our marketing material and the user interface itself is in English. So we're not too focused on the Finnish market because it is very small. And on the other hand, I see that there's a lot of good tech talent in Finland. There's a lot of companies working in artificial intelligence and image recognition, which are also closely related to what we're building, and those are doing really well, and the education has been of very high quality in Finland. And also now, if we look at our users, most of them are from the US, the UK, Canada, and that's where we're just pushing our own AdWords and Facebook advertising. So if you think about a digital SaaS business, it's not that relevant to be in all of those markets at the same time from the early stages, but we do recognize that there will be a point of time where we'll also have to have a physical presence in the bigger markets that we are catering to. We also have UK-based investors, so we went through a London-based accelerator called Collider.
Okay.
So we do believe that having that kind of contacts, mentors, and investors in bigger relevant advertising industry markets are very valuable for us as well.
Right. And then in terms of markets and in terms of how you see it going towards in the future, is there any trends that you see in this space that that you guys are definitely looking to maybe even be the category king in? So, I mean, where do you see the future of these ads and these sort of video creation going?
Yeah, I think basically the trends are that there's going to be more and more content, and that will mean that the budget per second the cost will go down. Customers won't be willing to pay, you know, the fees that the old kind of cost structure had in terms of making a big broadcast TV ad. They'd rather have, you know, multiple versions of the videos for multiple channels like Facebook, Instagram, so on. And of course, we're trying to cater to these demands in terms of product features the best we can. I won't go into too much details, but where we are patenting a technology for dynamic video creation, and we definitely do see a lot of trends there that we want to kind of play well to hopefully become the market leader in the next few years.
Very cool. Very cool. So we have a question from the audience here watching from Marcus Mantinen. Sorry, I say Finnish names very badly. And the question is, how much have you put in effort for board of directors, forming the board, external board members, frequent meetings, good corporate governance?
Yeah, good point. So of course our kind of like shareholder agreements state that we need to have a board of directors, but in an early stage, I think that our investors, for example, their main focus and kind of need from us that we focus is on building the product and you know, getting a strong foothold on the market. I think those are good things to keep in mind, but it's more of an issue when your company grows and you need structure, because without that structure, people wouldn't be performing, you know, optimally anymore. I think for us, we're still in the early stage that we have to focus very agile and very lean towards just building the product as fast as we can based on user feedback, and then getting the new versions of our product on the market.
And then speaking of investors, so I'm sure you guys have gone through at least a round or two. Can you tell us a little bit about when you decided to go looking for investment, and like what were you able to build before that, before you had to get an investment? Just for somebody who maybe who's watching, who maybe has their idea, they're really building it, but they're not exactly sure when to put their foot into the investors' rooms.
Yeah, that's a good question. We get asked that a lot at accelerator kind of coaching events as well, and I think it's a really interesting question for kind of people who haven't taken the entrepreneurial jump yet. And I used to listen to a lot of podcasts when I was running the production company about startups, and you know, US startups especially would say that, you know, maybe they didn't even have an MVP before they went and raised their first angel round, and that seemed really great. I mean, you know, it sounds like all you need is an idea, and then you can start raising money and then just employ people to build the actual product. But
yeah, it's like Shark Tank.
Yeah. But then you have to say that our experience has been that we've always been a bit too early in every round that we've been raising. Basically, the first round was by founders. The second was by the accelerator in London and the angel investors that backed them. In that second round, we had built an MVP that kind of we were able to pitch, but wasn't really a commercial product yet. And now we're just raising our third round. And in between, we've also raised sort of government subsidized innovation grant funding, but that's a bit different. But yeah, I think you really have to strike a balance between not being too early and not running out of cash, I guess. So and that's and it's not something I could answer for every case, because you know, it's more of a case by case kind of thing. The more your investor prospects have insight about the field that you're trying to solve a problem in, the more likely I think you are to be able to convince those investors, because the most hard time we've had was trying to convince investors that didn't have any experience in advertising or videos. Then they will only look at the monthly reoccurring revenue, the size of the market, and how much we've raised to date. And I think then you're running into problems because you're not actually getting, you're not discussing about the business idea or the product. You're more looking at in retrospective of how much you've been able to create sales, in the past. And I think that's something that startups will struggle in the early stages to make a strong impact. So I think the best off you are if you find an investor who's already working in that field.
Very true. Very, very good points. And was there anybody in that space or in those groups or around there that really, really kind of helped you? Maybe not even specifically investors. Was there specific people just in Helsinki that helped you guys go forward?
Yeah. So we've been to quite a few accelerators. I think depending on the duration and type, about 5 or 6, out of which one has been a more long-term, like a 4 or 6 month kind of obligation to actually go day to day to the workshop. So we've got significant mentoring. I'm grateful for Torsti Tenhunen in the Helsinki and Espoo region, who's coached us in Startup Sauna. I think he had a big impact on how to kind of formulate our value proposition from just being a sort of video self-service to a more AI-driven service, which we already had as a vision. But he kind of like said that, okay, you have to bring this, as the kind of the differentiating thing, and that really helped us won like the 3rd prize at Slush 100 last year. And I think those have had like a dramatic effect on the exposure that we've been able to gain. And then we've got a few mentors, Andy Tate through Collider in London, who we have regular chats with, and now we're just finalizing our 3rd funding round, and that's through a Finnish venture capital company. I won't name it yet because we haven't signed the papers, but those are also, they're guys who have, like, I've never been grilled so much. Like, we will have literally like a 2-hour phone call where they will just ask question after question on how I'm going to manage different things. But I think it's really for the thought process to also think about how you're going to actually manage the company in the future.
Yeah, it's actually a good point to keep in mind that when these investors are grilling you, it's not necessarily a bad thing. And it's not like they hate it. They just want to understand it properly to make sure you're going to be a success.
Exactly.
So it's good to take your approach where it's a positive thing.
Yeah,
where I think a lot of people take it as sort of a negative thing and, oh, we don't want that investor now. He's kind of an asshole.
Yeah,
something like that.
Of course, it's a big commitment, so you have to find the right people. But definitely, I think you have to be able to face the music. If you're trying to sort of hide some kind of weaknesses in your business, then it will just bite you, worse on the long run, I think.
Exactly. And then what about you personally? What is your motivation for being an entrepreneur, for going through all of these struggles and I mean, like you said, every single day it's an up and down thing. There's always something to overcome. So what kind of pushes you personally forward to continue?
Well, I think going back to the most personal level, I think going back to my kind of childhood and moving around a lot, I think it's this motive of trying to be sort of self-dependent in a way that can be financial partially, but not only financially. I think there's a strong kind of motivation of just trying to build a work culture and a workplace where it's kind of autonomous. It's been built by us, and there's a lot of like-minded people. Now there's 12 of us at the office at the moment, and it's going to grow probably double that next year or by 2020. So I think it's a lot about the journey itself, trying to find like-minded people and not being pushed around. It doesn't always mean that it's true. Our clients are around as well, but at least, there's that dream of building something that's kind of self-sustainable in a sense.
Right. I think a lot of entrepreneurs would agree with you. It's sort of being like your own man, being your own. You set your own goals, your own life.
Exactly.
So it's a really, really cool thing. In your industry, is there anybody who's really like inspiring you? Is there someone that you really sort of follow, whether that's a mentor or is it a company, or is there something that you see sort of as like a North Star or some idea of where you kind of want to go?
Maybe not industry specifically. And if you're talking about kind of the media and advertising industry, then maybe I actually try and read outside of that industry. So I'm kind of trying to build a more startup tech-based culture that kind of still caters to the ad and media industry, because sometimes it's good to read and kind of discover outside your own industry to try and get, you know, new ideas as well. The more you're sort of like working, you know, year after year in your own industry, the less likely you are to kind of provide new out of the box ideas, right? So,
Right.
But a lot of reading, like, let me think. The Hard Thing About Hard Things, which is written by think about the writer's name. This Ben Horowitz,
Okay.
who's the founder of Andreessen Horowitz, one of the most successful Silicon Valley venture capital companies. That's been a big one because like it took them years to overcome the aforementioned challenges, and it's kind of comforting to read about somebody else's journey. Then Peter Thiel and a lot of people in that space who have kind of like taken a very, very unique journey to build new companies. I think that's very exciting.
Right. And then if we're getting sort of the end of this this live stream right now, what kind of advice would you give to somebody who wants to get into this sort of ad industry? Is there anything that maybe is like a really easy comment on, if you're going to get into this industry, you should do something? What would that be?
Well, actually, one thing that I've run into, and it's not actually video related, but programmatic advertising is still going to be a very growing thing. We have a lot of talent in that sector in Finland as well, but I think there's a lot of opportunities in that. If you're in video or more media content related things, or if that's your interest, then try and think of kind of what kind of new consumption ways people will have, and try and sort of cater to that. But just, I think for a lot of young people, I know we read a lot on the news of young people becoming kind of startup billionaires of whatever when they're under 30. But I think on hindsight, even though I said I've been an entrepreneur for 13 years, it's a lot easier to try and go to your first, you know, jobs just to kind of learn the trade and then start your own company. So I think there's a lot to be kind of learned just, you know, getting your first few jobs within the industry and then kind of just, you know, trying to solve the problem by starting your own company, not you know, the other way around.
Very true, and that's very, very good advice. So I guess that's how we can end the live stream. It was a really good last comment. Just want to thank everybody for joining us on Nordic Startup. You can join us every single Thursday here, where we have another live stream chat with another entrepreneur from somewhere around the Nordics, around the world. So thank you again, Joel, for joining us, and thank you, Nordic Startup Facebook group. And have a good weekend, and see you guys all next Thursday.
Thanks for having me, Shane. Bye.
Bye-bye.